Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
All right, so get ready, because this week in U.S. politics was, it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was like drinking from a fire hose, you know?
I know what you mean.
We're talking some major international shakeups, economic curveballs, and even hostage negotiations. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it all happened in just 7 days.
I know, with, you guessed it, Donald Trump back at the helm.
It really has been a whirlwind, you know? I think the global community is still sort of adjusting to Trump being back in the White House.
For sure, for sure.
And this week definitely threw them a few curveballs.
No kidding, no kidding. So we've got excerpts here from a news article called Trump's Week: Tariffs, Ukraine, Hamas, and Congress Address.
Oh, wow.
And believe me, it lives up to that title. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll not only know what happened, but you'll understand like the potential ripple effects that could be playing out for months to come.
Yeah, that's key. We're not just going for headlines here.
Right.
But like really trying to get ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
See where things might be heading.
Exactly. So let's start with the situation in Ukraine.
Okay.
This article points out a pretty dramatic shift in U.S.-Ukraine relations.
Hmm.
We're talking a full-on pause of military aid, and not just any aid. We're talking about the heavy hitters, you know, Javelin anti-tank missiles,
Right.
the very systems that have been so instrumental in their defense. And on top of that, intelligence sharing has been significantly reduced,
Wow.
leaving Ukraine scrambling to fill the gaps.
Yeah, and this is a huge deal. We're not talking about like a symbolic gesture here.
Right.
The U.S. has committed billions in military aid to Ukraine since the war began.
Yeah.
And cutting that off so abruptly is, you know, a major blow to their ability to resist Russian aggression.
Right.
Not to mention the intelligence sharing piece that's critical for Ukraine to be able to like anticipate and counter Russian moves. So, yeah, this pause is sending shockwaves through the Ukrainian government and military for sure.
Yeah. The article mentions that Zelensky is basically in crisis mode right now, working every angle he can to try and get back in Trump's good graces. They even talk about how he's pushing for a peace deal, something he's resisted in the past.
Oh, wow.
But now it seems like he's desperate to secure some kind of deal. It paints a pretty bleak picture of his options.
And it's not just Ukraine feeling the heat.
Yeah.
European leaders are reportedly extremely concerned about this shift in U.S. policy.
Made sense.
Some are even talking about increasing their own support to Ukraine to try and fill the void left by the U.S.
Right.
But it's unclear if that'll be enough to offset the impact of Trump's decision.
Right.
It's really throwing a wrench in the gears of the existing, you know, alliances and power dynamics in the region.
So we've got potential instability brewing in Eastern Europe, and that's just the first item on our list.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears now and talk about what's happening closer to home. Trump decided to throw a bit of a tariff party, and guess who he invited?
Oh, boy.
Canada and Mexico.
Oh, no.
Right? And this isn't just your typical, like, neighborly get-together. He slapped tariffs on a wide range of goods from both countries, which immediately sent shockwaves through the market.
Yeah, I bet.
The article says the Dow dropped over 500 points the day the tariffs were announced. People were freaking out.
Yeah.
But then, almost as quickly, Trump announced some exemptions.
Oh,
For specific Canadian and Mexican goods. It's like he wanted to cause chaos and then play the hero by offering a little relief.
Well, it definitely created a lot of uncertainty and volatility in the markets.
Sure.
These tariffs are essentially taxes on imported goods. And while Trump claims they're designed to protect American jobs and businesses, there's a lot of debate about their effectiveness.
Right.
In fact, many economists argue that tariffs can actually harm the economy in the long run by driving up prices for consumers and businesses.
Yeah, and let's not forget the personal touch. Trump publicly praised his relationship with Mexico's president, calling it very good. But when it came to Canada's Trudeau, things were, shall we say, a bit frostier. The article describes their conversations as colorful, which I'm guessing is diplomatic code for things got heated.
Definitely. And this is a perfect illustration of how Trump's personal relationships and negotiation style can impact international affairs.
Right.
He tends to be very transactional and unpredictable, which can create tension and distrust even with close allies like Canada, this kind of unpredictability makes it really difficult for other countries to plan and strategize,
Yeah.
which further adds to the instability we're seeing on the world stage.
Wow, so much to unpack already. Okay, so we've got Ukraine on edge and a potential trade war brewing with our neighbors, but hold on tight because things are about to get even wilder. This article drops a bombshell, direct talks between the White House and Hamas
Oh, wow.
concerning hostages.
Yeah, this is something no one saw coming. I mean, for decades, U.S. policy has been to completely avoid direct engagement with Hamas, considering them a terrorist organization.
Right.
Now, not only is Trump talking to them, but he's doing it without involving Israel,
Yeah.
which is a huge departure from the norm.
It's a move that's raising eyebrows all over the place. The article mentions that Trump issued what he called a last warning to Hamas, demanding the release of Israeli hostages and vowing to support Israel in finishing the job. Those are pretty strong words, and it's hard to know exactly what they mean.
Yeah, it's definitely creating a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in the region.
For sure.
What does finishing the job entail? Is he talking about military action, economic sanctions, something else entirely? This vagueness is classic Trump.
Right.
But it's also incredibly dangerous in a region as volatile as the Middle East.
And Hamas isn't backing down either. The article mentions that they accuse Trump of encouraging Israel to break the current ceasefire and escalate the conflict. They're basically calling him out, saying he's playing with fire.
And they're not wrong to be concerned. This situation is incredibly delicate. Direct talks with Hamas could be a sign that Trump is willing to break with long-standing diplomatic norms to achieve specific goals. But it could also backfire spectacularly, potentially strengthening Hamas's position and undermining efforts to achieve a lasting peace in the region.
It's like walking a tightrope over a very deep chasm.
Yeah.
One wrong step and the consequences could be catastrophic. All right, let's take a deep breath and move away from the international scene for a moment. Back home, Trump gave his first address to a joint session of Congress, and you guessed it, he broke a record this time. It was for the longest presidential speech in history.
He seems to have a knack for breaking records, doesn't he? And, of course, it wasn't just the length of the speech that people are talking about. There was plenty of drama surrounding it, too. Democrat Al Green was ejected from the chamber for disrupting the speech, and Trump used the opportunity to really go after his political opponents. The atmosphere was incredibly tense and partisan.
Yeah, the article describes it as a combative speech filled with jabs at the Democrats and boasts about his achievements, but it also gave us some insight into his agenda for this second term. He talked a lot about the economy, predicting some turbulence in the short term due to the tariffs he's imposed, but ultimately promising a new era of American prosperity.
It's fascinating because on one hand, he's acknowledging that his policies might cause some pain in the short term.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he's doubling down on his belief that his approach is ultimately what's best for the American economy. He seems convinced that his protectionist policies will, in the long run, lead to more jobs and greater economic strength for the U.S., even if it means disrupting global trade and potentially alienating allies.
And speaking of disrupting things, let's not forget his ongoing support for Elon Musk and his, let's call them, unconventional business practices. The article mentions how Trump specifically praised Musk during his speech, highlighting him as a visionary leader and a symbol of American innovation.
This is a relationship that really intrigues me. You've got two incredibly powerful individuals, both known for their disregard for traditional norms and their willingness to shake things up. They seem to have a genuine admiration for each other, and I think it says a lot about Trump's priorities and his vision for the future. He clearly sees Musk as a key player in achieving his goals for American economic dominance and technological advancement.
Okay, so we've got the tariffs, the Ukraine situation, the Hamas talks, and a record-breaking, drama-filled speech to Congress. It's almost too much to process, but there's one more little detail I want to unpack before we move on. During his speech, Trump made a comment about using a scalpel instead of a hatchet when it comes to potential changes in his cabinet. What do you make of that?
It's an interesting choice of words, especially given the constant churn of personnel we saw during his first term. Remember all those firings and resignations?
Oh, yeah.
It was chaos. This scalpel comment could be interpreted as a sign that he's planning to take a more strategic, deliberate approach to staffing his administration this time around.
Maybe he's learned from his past mistakes.
Perhaps. Or maybe it's just a way of trying to project an image of control and stability. Only time will tell what his true intentions are. But it's definitely something worth paying attention to.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, it's clear that Trump's second term is off to a, shall we say, eventful start.
Indeed. He's already making waves both domestically and internationally, and It's clear that he's not afraid to shake things up and challenge the status quo.
Mm.
The question is, will his gamble pay off, or will it lead to even greater instability and conflict?
It really does feel like we're watching a high-wire act, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Trump is up there juggling chainsaws, and the whole world is holding its breath to see what happens next.
It's certainly a high-stakes game he's playing.
For sure.
And the potential consequences are huge. I mean, we could be looking at, global economic instability, escalating conflicts, even a fundamental shift in the world order.
And this deep dive has been all about connecting those dots for you. But now it's time to hear what you think. Yeah, what's your take on all of this? What stood out to you the most?
Yeah. Was there anything that particularly surprised you about Trump's actions this week, or maybe something that made you see things in a new light?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, from the paused aid to Ukraine, the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, those unprecedented talks with Hamas, and even Trump's record-breaking speech to Congress. It's a lot to digest.
It is. And remember, we're only getting one perspective here.
Right.
There are many other viewpoints and interpretations out there, and it's important to, consider them all before forming your own conclusions.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to challenge the narratives you hear, to question assumptions, and to really dig deep into the issues.
Yeah, this deep dive is just the beginning of the conversation.
Right.
We've given you the tools and insights to understand the events of this whirlwind week, but the story is far from over.
So true, Trump's second term is just getting started, and we can be sure there will be many more twists and turns along the way.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, keep asking questions. That's what this deep dive is all about. Until next time, keep exploring.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.